The year was 2147, and Earth was no longer the home it once had been. Cities that had once shone brightly under the sun were now gray and crumbling. Rivers ran thin and muddy. Forests had turned to deserts, and the air was heavy with the smell of smoke and dust. Humanity had grown used to struggling, but even the strongest had begun to lose hope. In a vast orbital command station hovering above the Earth, Dr. Alara Voss stared at the glowing screen in front of her. She had spent her entire life studying the stars, imagining that one day they might hold answers to humanity's greatest problems. Now they were her last hope. She typed the final lines of the message, a simple plea for help. To whoever can hear us in the cosmos, Earth needs aid. We are failing. Please, send guidance or support. The message was sent through a powerful signal, faster than anything humanity had ever used. It streaked past satellites beyond the moon and into the vast black emptiness of space. Alara held her breath as the last pulse disappeared into the stars. Around her, scientists and engineers murmured nervously. They had done everything they could, everything except miracles. What if no one answers? Asked Kieran Hale, a former military strategist who had been assigned to oversee Earth safety protocols. His voice was quiet but edged with worry. Alara shook her head, though her own heart was heavy. We have to believe someone is out there. We have to. If we don't, then what hope is left? As the team watched the stars, a strange vibration began deep beneath the Earth's surface. It was faint at first, like the soft thrum of a heartbeat buried under layers of rock and soil. No one noticed it at first, distracted by the blinking lights of satellites and the humming consoles of the station. Far below the surface, in caverns untouched by humans for millions of years, something stirred. Massive eyes glinting like black gemstones opened slowly. Tentacles, wings, and armored limbs shifted in the darkness. Creatures vast and powerful had been sleeping through the ages, lying beneath mountains and oceans. And now they were awake. The creatures sensed something different in the vibrations of Earth, something alive and urgent. They did not see humans as stars did. They felt the tremors of human desperation and curiosity, and in their own way they responded. The Earth had cried out and the monsters had listened. Back in the orbital station, alarms began to ring. A small tremor shook the building, barely noticeable at first. The engineers looked at each other and shrugged. Earth was always shaking somewhere. Still, Alara felt a chill run down her spine. Something was not right. She could feel it in the air, in the hum of the computers, in the tension of her team. The message, it's gone. Into the stars, she whispered to herself, almost as if saying it out loud could make it real. Outside on the surface, people went about their day as usual. Children played in dusty parks, workers hurried along cracked streets, and cars rattled down broken roads. No one noticed the faint tremors beneath their feet, or the low rumble that was beginning to grow stronger. Then in a small town near the edge of a desert, the ground shook violently. Windows rattled and birds scattered into the sky. People screamed and ran for cover. Roads split like paper, and the earth rose and fell in unnatural ways. It was the first sign of something awakening. In the caves beneath the mountains, the monsters pushed through rock and stone as if it were paper. They were massive, their forms unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Some had long, glimmering limbs. Others had thick, plated armor that gleamed even in darkness. Their eyes were intelligent, watching, learning, curious about the humans who had dared to reach for the stars. Alara and her team saw strange readings on their instruments, energy surges, seismic activity, signals that did not come from any natural source. The scientists tried to explain it, to find a logical reason. Yet deep down, Alara feared the truth. Something had answered the call, but it was not from the stars. Something had answered from Earth itself. Night fell over the planet, and the creatures moved silently through the shadows. Humanity slept, unaware that the first of the monsters had already walked among them. The stars above twinkled indifferently, while deep below, the Earth had begun to reclaim its strength. Alara stared out from the orbital station, her mind racing. She thought of the message, of hope, of salvation, and then she felt a creeping, terrifying thought take root. What if the help they had asked for was not what they expected? Somewhere deep beneath the surface, the monsters stirred, preparing to explore a world that humans believed they owned. The Earth's children had cried to the stars for help, but the monsters of Earth had answered first. The morning after the tremors, the world seemed almost normal. People walked the streets unaware that something beneath their feet had already changed. At first, the shaking had been small, just a whisper of movement easy to ignore. But now reports of vanished towns and strange footprints began to trickle in. In a desert town called Airedale, the ground had cracked in jagged lines. Homes were torn open like boxes and vehicles lay overturned. Yet no human was found. The only evidence was enormous claw marks leading toward the distant mountains. Eyewitnesses described shadows moving faster than anything they had ever seen, shapes that made their blood run cold. Dr. Ilara Voss studied the satellite images from the orbital station. She frowned. The patterns were strange, almost too precise to be random. "It's not an earthquake," she said firmly. "Something is moving on purpose. Something alive." Kieran Hale, standing beside her, clenched his fists. "Alive, you mean? Monsters?" he asked, though he tried not to sound afraid. "Yes," Ilara said softly. "I don't know how many, but they are enormous. And they are intelligent. Intelligent." The word weighed heavily in the room. Humanity had always thought of monsters as mindless threats, creatures to destroy or escape from. But these were different. They were aware of humans. They watched, learned, and adapted. Meanwhile, across the world, the monsters emerged from their hiding places. In underground caverns, thick forests, and sunless ocean trenches, they moved silently. Some had scales that glimmered in dim light. Others had long, whip-like limbs that could crush anything in a single strike. Many had eyes that could see in complete darkness, scanning the land for signs of life. As the creatures explored, humans began to feel the first wave of fear. News outlets reported cities experiencing tremors, entire villages disappearing, and strange growls echoing through the night. Panic spread faster than the monsters themselves. Governments scrambled to respond, sending armed forces to investigate. Yet weapons that had once conquered armies and beasts seemed useless. Bullets bounced off armored hides, and explosions only made the monsters pause for a moment before continuing their march. In Airedale, a small squad of soldiers tried to defend the town. They set up barricades and fired at the shadows moving across the desert. One soldier shouted, "It's too fast! We can't hit it!" The creatures watched, seemingly unfazed. They did not attack recklessly. They studied the humans' movements, analyzing how they fought and reacted. Their curiosity was terrifying, for it came with a deadly precision. Back at the orbital station, Ilara observed the pattern forming across the planet. It was as if the monsters were drawn to areas most damaged by humans, places where the land had been stripped bare, rivers polluted, forests cleared. "They are responding to us," she said. "Not just to our signal, to everything we've done to the Earth." Kieran's jaw tightened. So calling for help didn't just wake them up. "We triggered this," Ilara nodded grimly. "Yes, the Earth itself is fighting back." The team realized that understanding the monsters would be crucial to survival. They began analyzing seismic data, studying footprints, claw marks, and energy readings. Slowly, a picture emerged. The monsters were not mindless destroyers. They were ancient guardians, responding to human activity with judgment and curiosity rather than malice. In one coastal city, a monster rose from the ocean. Its massive limbs crushed boats as it reached the shore. Yet it paused when it noticed people repairing a damaged pier instead of attacking them. A child waved from a distance and the creature hesitated. It did not understand human gestures but sensed the intent behind them. Ilara realized that survival would require more than weapons. Humans would need intelligence, cooperation, and creativity. They could not rely on force alone. Ordinary citizens, engineers, and scientists became as important as soldiers. Every observation, every experiment, every small action could save lives. That night, tremors continued across the globe. But in small towns and cities, people began noticing something else. An unusual calm when humans treated the land with care. Areas where forests were still healthy, rivers flowing clean, and wildlife undisturbed seemed to be avoided by the creatures. Slowly, the pattern became clear. The monsters were testing humanity, learning whether they were a threat or allies of the Earth. Ilara and Kieran exchanged a look. "We have a chance," she said quietly. "If we understand them, maybe we can survive." Kieran nodded, though his eyes were wary. "And if we fail?" Ilara did not answer. She could not. All she knew was that humanity had awakened something powerful, something that could destroy them in an instant. But she also knew that humans had always survived impossible odds before, not because they were strongest, but because they were clever, resourceful, and brave. Beneath the earth, the monsters paused. Their eyes gleamed in the darkness, and they sensed the humans above them. They were ready to explore, to judge, to decide. And for the first time, humanity began to realize the truth. The call for help had not brought salvation from the stars. It had awakened the guardians of their own planet. The earth was alive, and it was watching. The monsters were no longer just shadows in the night. They were moving across cities, deserts, and forests with purpose. Their presence could no longer be ignored. Humanity realized that survival would require more than hiding. It would require fighting back and thinking faster than the creatures themselves. Dr. Ilara Voss gathered her team in the orbital command station. "Weapons alone won't work," she said firmly. "They adapt too quickly. We need strategy, intelligence, and observation. We need to understand them." Kieran Hale, once a military commander, frowned. "Strategy, yes. But we also need defenses. People are dying out there," Ilara nodded. "We will combine both. We'll fight, but carefully. We'll study them, learn their weaknesses, and use what we know to protect people." The first experiments were dangerous. Drones were sent into cities where the monsters had been spotted. Cameras captured their movements, how they shifted, how they moved, how they reacted to attacks. Soldiers tried to hit them with lasers and heavy artillery. The creatures barely flinched, dodging strikes with uncanny precision. Some even seemed to anticipate the attacks, avoiding them before the weapons fired. "Impossible," one soldier whispered. "They're thinking ahead," Ilara frowned. "Not thinking like us. They respond to patterns and energy. They're aware, but not human. That is the key." The team discovered something surprising. Certain frequencies, vibrations, and energy fields caused the monsters to hesitate. In some cases, they paused entirely, watching the humans below. It became clear brute force was not the solution. Observation and clever use of technology could protect humans and buy them time. Meanwhile, across the planet, people began to fight back in unexpected ways. Ordinary citizens built traps and shelters, guided by scientists' instructions. Engineers designed devices that used sound waves and vibrations to divert monsters away from towns. Communities coordinated evacuation routes and safe zones. Humanity was fighting together, not just with weapons, but with intelligence and creativity. In one city, a team of engineers used machines to create vibrations that mimicked natural Earth movements. The monsters, confused by the signals, stopped their advance. This small victory was celebrated quietly but powerfully. Humanity realized that adaptability, not firepower, was their greatest weapon. Kieran led a squad to test these ideas in the field. They moved cautiously, setting traps and observing how the monsters reacted. One massive creature approached, its armored limbs dragging along the ground. Kieran signaled his team to activate the vibration devices. The monster paused, then slowly turned away, heading into an uninhabited forest. The soldiers stared in awe. Ilara watched from the station. "We are learning," she said. "Every day, every attempt teaches us more. We are not helpless." Even as humanity fought, the monsters continued to explore. They were intelligent, yes, but also curious. Some appeared to observe humans without attacking. Others reacted violently when they sensed destruction or danger to Earth. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The monsters were not enemies in the way humans had feared. They were responding to threats to their world, to the imbalance humans had caused over centuries. In a small village, a child dropped a ball into a crater left by a previous attack. A massive creature approached, curious, and picked up the ball gently with one of its massive claws. It held it for a moment, then set it down carefully before retreating. Witnesses called it a miracle. Scientists called it a breakthrough. Humanity began to understand that these creatures could be influenced, guided, even reasoned with, if humans acted wisely. Ilara and Kieran convened a council of survivors, engineers, and scientists. "We cannot destroy them," she said. "We can only survive and learn. If we cooperate with the Earth, if we act carefully, we can protect our people and perhaps even coexist." Kieran nodded slowly. "It won't be easy. Every wrong move costs lives, but it's a chance, a real chance." As humans organized, the monsters continued their slow, deliberate march across the planet. Some cities became testing grounds. Others were left untouched if humans avoided destroying their environment. The creatures seemed to sense intentions, reacting not just to people but to the Earth itself. Night fell. and humans in surviving towns worked tirelessly, building, studying, and learning. The world had changed forever, but for the first time since the monsters awakened, there was hope. Humans were not powerless. They were clever, resourceful, and resilient. They had survived centuries of hardship, and now they faced a new challenge. Deep beneath the earth, the monsters paused, observing the humans above. Some retreated to rest, some explored further, but all were watching, learning. Humanity had survived the first attacks, but the struggle was only beginning. Ilara gazed out at the dark horizon, knowing that every action now mattered. "We are fighting not just to survive," she whispered, "but to show the earth that we can be its guardians too." The monsters had awakened. The world had changed, and humanity had begun to resist, not with force alone, but with intelligence, courage, and determination. For the first time, humans realized they could face the Earth's greatest challenge and perhaps one day earn its trust. Weeks had passed since the monsters first awakened. Humanity had survived by clever tactics, careful observation, and cooperation, yet the world remained tense. Every town, every city, every field could become a battlefield at any moment. Still, a new hope emerged, the realization that the monsters were not simply evil. They were responding to Earth itself. Dr. Ilara Voss studied the latest reports from ground teams. Patterns had become clear. The creatures avoided areas where humans had worked to repair the environment. Forests that were carefully preserved, rivers kept clean, and wildlife left undisturbed seemed almost sacred to them. Conversely, regions scarred by pollution, deforestation, and mining drew the monsters' attention aggressively. "They are not attacking blindly," Ilara explained to Kieran Hale. "They are responding to the health of the planet. They see where we are destroying it and come to stop us. They are guardians." Kieran's face was serious. "Guardians? Then how do we survive? How do we make them leave us alone?" Ilara smiled faintly. "We survive by proving we can care for the Earth, by showing that we are not just destroyers but protectors too." The idea seemed almost impossible at first. Cities were in ruins, forests were burned, rivers were polluted. Humanity had a long way to go. But small teams began experimenting with ways to communicate indirectly with the monsters. Vibrations, patterns of light, and even carefully placed energy pulses became tools of dialogue. By responding to the monsters in a way that showed humans respected the Earth, they could influence their behavior. In one city, survivors repaired a waterway that had been blocked and filled with debris. When a massive creature appeared, instead of attacking, it paused at the edge of the restored river. It touched the water gently with its limb, observing the humans at work. Then slowly it retreated. Word spread quickly. The monsters could be influenced by human action. Ilara and her team developed a system of earth signals. Using sound, vibration, and light patterns, humans could show the creatures where the land was being cared for and where destruction was happening. It was dangerous work. One wrong signal could provoke a monster into attacking. But over time, they learned the subtle balance. In one daring mission, Kieran led a group to a devastated forest. They set up sensors, repaired parts of the land, and carefully emitted vibrations through the soil. A massive tentacled creature approached, its glowing eyes scanning the humans. Everyone held their breath. The monster stopped, touched the ground gently, then moved on without attacking. It was the first direct confirmation that the monsters were responding to human effort, not just instinct. Ilara realized the profound truth. Humans could coexist with the creatures, but only if the Muste changed their ways. They could not fight the Earth's guardians with weapons. They had to prove they were worthy of survival. This required intelligence, creativity, and patience, a far greater challenge than brute force. Communities began to unite around restoration projects. Engineers repaired rivers, planted trees, and built safe habitats for animals. Cities redesigned streets to protect natural areas. People worked together in ways they had never done before, not just to survive, but to earn the planet's trust. For the first time, humans felt a strange sense of connection to the monsters. They were not enemies to destroy, but forces to understand. Children watched from safe distances as creatures passed, learning patterns and observing behavior. Scientists documented every interaction, sharing knowledge across continents. Humanity had become students of their own planet, and the monsters had become their teachers. At night, Ilara looked out from the orbital command station. Lights twinkled across the Earth, some from repaired cities, others from sensors and signals. Deep beneath the planet, the monsters paused in the darkness. They sensed the change. Some explored further, curious but cautious. Others rested satisfied with the signs of repair above them. Kieran joined her, his expression thoughtful. "It's strange," he said. "We feared them, yet now I almost feel respect. They are not just creatures. They are a part of Earth itself." Ilara nodded. "And now we understand something essential. Survival is not about fighting them. It's about learning from them. We must protect the planet and in doing so protect ourselves." The monsters continued their quiet patrols, judging humanity with patience and intelligence. Humans repaired, rebuilt, and adjusted. Every action mattered. Every choice could be a signal of care or destruction. The stakes were high, but hope had returned. The Earth had spoken. The monsters were listening. Humanity had begun to understand that their survival depended not on defeating the creatures, but on proving they could be guardians of their world. And for the first time in decades, humans felt that maybe, just maybe, they could earn the Earth's trust. Months had passed since the monsters first awoke. Humanity had learned hard lessons, losing towns and lives along the way. Yet through struggle, they had discovered something powerful. Humans were clever, resourceful, and capable of change. Slowly, the world began to rebuild, not just to survive, but to heal. Dr. Ilara Voss stood on a hillside overlooking a newly planted forest. Trees swayed gently in the wind, and a nearby river sparkled clean and clear. This was no small effort. Communities had worked together, repairing the damage humans had caused over decades. It was the first visible sign of hope. Kieran Hale joined her, scanning the horizon. "Do you think they'll come?" he asked, pointing to the distant mountains. Ilara smiled faintly. "They are always watching, but now they are watching a world that is trying to be worthy of them." Indeed, the monsters had noticed. In recent weeks, sightings had changed. Creatures that had once struck fear into towns had paused, observed, and retreated when humans acted responsibly. One massive creature had even been seen helping repair a broken bridge by shifting large boulders aside, unintentionally aiding humans. It was a reminder that these beings were not mindless predators. They were forces of the Earth itself, responding to balance and care. In cities, people had changed. Streets were lined with trees, rivers cleared, and parks restored. Scientists and engineers had built devices to monitor the land, ensuring that communities did not fall back into old destructive habits. The monsters still moved in the shadows, still curious and cautious, but attacks had decreased dramatically. Humanity had learned that survival required intelligence, cooperation, and respect for the planet. Ilara walked through one such city, watching children play among the restored gardens. Their laughter was a soft victory, proof that humans could coexist with the creatures. Engineers adjusted signals that communicated with the monsters, ensuring that human activity would be read as care rather than threat. Kieran approached a team working on a riverbank. "How's it going?" he asked. "Good," one engineer replied. "The creatures have slowed their patrols here. They watch, but they don't interfere. It's as if they approve." Ilara considered this. "They are teaching us, not just punishing, not just testing. They are guiding us to become better guardians of Earth." For the first time, humanity felt a connection to the planet that went beyond survival. They were no longer masters of a dying world, they were partners, students of a living, breathing Earth. Every restored forest, every cleaned river, every protected animal became a symbol of hope. In the forests and mountains, the monsters had begun to retreat. Not completely, but enough for humans to rebuild safely. Some had been seen moving to deep caves, others swimming to untouched oceans, always alert but no longer immediately hostile. Their patience had taught humans that force was not the answer. Understanding was, Ilara and Kieran watched the horizon as the sun set, painting the sky with brilliant colors. "We have come a long way," Kieran said quietly. "Yes," Ilara replied. "But the journey is not over. We must continue to care for the Earth every day. The monsters will return if we forget our responsibilities. Survival is not a one-time effort, it is continuous." Across the planet, humans worked tirelessly. Cities and communities, once focused on expansion and consumption, now focused on restoration. They built not only for themselves, but for the life of the planet. Education programs taught children about the monsters and the importance of balance. Technology was used wisely, not recklessly. Every human action became a choice, a step toward harmony. The monsters, once feared as unstoppable forces, had become teachers. Humans had learned humility, patience, and the power of intelligence combined with compassion, and in return the Earth had given humanity a second chance, a chance to survive not by domination, but by understanding and respect. One night, standing on a cliff overlooking a restored valley, Ilara spoke softly to Kieran. "We cried to the stars for help, but Earth answered first. The monsters were never just threats, they were reminders of our responsibilities." Kieran nodded. "We survived because we adapted. We fought, yes, but not only with weapons. We used our minds, our hearts, and our courage. We earned our place here." Below them in the valley, a massive creature moved through the trees. Its eyes glowed softly, and it paused to observe the humans tending to the land. Then, without a sound, it disappeared into the shadows. It was a silent acknowledgement, a sign that the Earth and its guardians were watching, but no longer threatening. Ilara looked to the stars, thinking of the message humanity had sent into space. Perhaps one day someone would answer. But now humanity understood that help had come from the most important place, home. The monsters of Earth had tested them, challenged them, and ultimately guided them toward a future they could shape. Humanity had survived the awakening. They had grown stronger, wiser, and more united. They had learned that intelligence, courage, and respect for life were more powerful than any weapon. And in the quiet of the restored world, humans and Earth's guardians existed together in a delicate, hopeful harmony. For the first time in centuries, the planet was alive and humans were ready to protect it.